Dr. Alara Jacobs stood on the observation deck of the shuttle as the planet VRYTH came into view. Its vibrant greens and blues shimmered beneath the thin atmosphere, an almost dreamlike contrast to the faded browns and grays of Earth. The sight stirred something deep inside her, a mixture of awe, relief, and a lingering apprehension. The Cowrith, the alien species she had studied for so long, had lived through their own ecological collapse centuries before. They had not only survived, but rebuilt their world into something magnificent. Now, they were offering to help humanity do the same. The shuttle's descent was smooth, the quiet hum of its engines the only sound as they neared the surface. Alara felt the lightness of VRYTH's gravity as the ship gently touched down on the landing platform. She had prepared herself for this moment for years, poring over every scrap of information available about the Cowrith, studying their culture, their technology, and their history. But no amount of research could have fully prepared her for what lay ahead. Stepping onto an alien world, for the first time in human history, was beyond the scope of any textbook. The air outside the shuttle was crisp, clean, and carried a faint floral scent unfamiliar to her. She took a slow, deep breath, feeling her lungs fill with something purer than she had experienced in years on Earth. The landscape around her was a harmonious blend of nature and civilization. Structures that appeared to grow organically from the ground, their surfaces shimmering with an otherworldly bioluminescence, blending seamlessly into the surrounding environment. She had been told that the Cowrith lived in complete symbiosis with their planet. Where human cities on Earth were harsh, angular, and destructive, the Cowrith settlements seemed to breathe with the life of VRYTH itself. Buildings, roads, and machinery were constructed with an innate understanding of the natural world, their forms soft and flowing, more like living organisms than rigid constructs of metal and stone. As Alara walked, her eyes drank in every detail, her scientific mind racing. How had the Cowrith achieved this? Earth, too, had once been green, lush, and full of life, but humanity's relentless drive for expansion had choked the planet dry. VRYTH, by contrast, was vibrant and alive, as though its very essence had been intertwined with the lives of the Cowrith themselves. Her Cowrith guide was waiting for her at the base of the ramp, an emissary sent to welcome her to their world. Taller and more graceful than humans, the Cowrith moved with an effortless elegance. Their bodies were slender and opalescent, their skin reflecting the light with a soft glow. They wore garments that seemed woven from natural fibers, the fabric flowing like water over their limbs. But it was their eyes that captivated Alara the most. Large and shimmering, their deep, purple hues seemed to hold within them the vastness of space, as though they could see beyond the physical world and into the heart of the universe itself. There was something both alien and familiar in the Cowrith's presence, something that unsettled and intrigued her in equal measure. Though she had spent years studying their physiology and culture, there was an unspoken connection between them, a bridge that she had not anticipated. The Cowrith seemed to share her curiosity, observing her with a detached interest that masked a deeper understanding. For them, humans were a species driven by emotions that the Cowrith themselves found difficult to comprehend. And yet, there was a mutual recognition of the struggles that both species faced, of the scars they carried from their histories. Alara could feel the weight of this moment. She was not merely a scientist or an envoy here. She was a representative of her entire species. The Cowrith, having saved their world from destruction, now stood on the precipice of a delicate relationship with humanity. This was a time of first contact, first exchange, first collaboration. Every step she took on VRYTH's surface was a step into the unknown, a path that could lead either to salvation or deeper conflict. As they moved away from the landing platform, Alara's mind turned to Earth. Her home was dying, a planet ravaged by centuries of exploitation and neglect. The Cowrith offered the tantalizing possibility of reversing that destruction, of restoring balance to the ecosystems that had been torn apart by human greed. But there were others back on Earth who did not share optimism. Political factions had already begun to stir, wary what they saw as undue alien influence. There were whispers of conspiracy, fears that the Cowrith's technology would be used to manipulate rather than heal. The fragile alliance was not universally welcomed. Likewise, among the Cowrith, not all were eager to embrace this new relationship. Their society had achieved a delicate harmony after centuries of struggle, and some feared that humanity, with its chaotic nature and volatile emotions, would upset that balance. There was a deep-rooted suspicion, a belief that humans were not yet ready for the kind of enlightenment the Calrith had achieved. Ilara had sensed this undercurrent even before her arrival, through the briefing she had received. Now, walking through the streets of a Calrith city for the first time, she could feel it in the air, a cautious tension that mirrored her own. The vehicle that carried them through the city was unlike anything Ilara had seen on Earth. It moved silently, suspended above the ground by some form of advanced technology that defied human understanding. She marveled at the ease with which it glided through the landscape, not disturbing even the smallest blades of alien grass as it passed. This was a world where technology and nature coexisted in perfect balance, each feeding into the other in a symbiotic dance. Ilara's thoughts drifted back to her mission. She was here to learn, to absorb everything she could about the Calrith's methods of environmental restoration. There were rumors that their technology could reverse the effects of centuries of pollution and climate change, that it could bring dead ecosystems back to life. If it was true, it would be nothing short of a miracle for Earth. But the Calrith were cautious, guarding their secrets closely. Ilara knew that earning their trust would take time, and perhaps more than scientific knowledge could offer. Yet there was something else forming beneath the surface, something more personal. As she spent more time on VRYTH, as she observed the Calrith and their way of life, she felt an inexplicable bond growing. It was not just the beauty of their world or the elegance of their technology. It was a connection she felt with the Calrith themselves. And with her guide, in particular, there was a depth to his presence, an unspoken understanding that passed between them without words. He seemed as fascinated by her as she was by him, though their fascinations were rooted in very different places. For Ilara, it was the way he moved, the way he seemed to exist in perfect harmony with his environment, never disrupting, only contributing. For him, it was her very human nature, her emotions, her curiosity, her drive to understand and to adapt. In the quiet moments, she could feel his gaze lingering on her, as though he were trying to unravel the complexity of her being. And perhaps, in a way, she was doing the same with him. The tension between their worlds, the cautious optimism that had marked this diplomatic exchange, weighed heavily on her. Ilara could sense that there were forces on both sides that would prefer to see this alliance fail. But standing here, on this alien world, feeling the subtle pulse of life all around her, she knew there was something deeper at stake. This wasn't just about technology or environmental restoration. It was about understanding each other, understanding themselves. In time, the bond between her and her Calrith guide would deepen, becoming something more than mere curiosity. It would become a symbol, not just of the tenuous alliance between their two species, but of the possibility that, despite their vast differences, there was a connection between them that transcended biology and culture. It was a connection that hinted at something both profound and dangerous, the possibility that love, in all its forms, might be the key to their survival. And as the stars shone down on the planet VRYTH, illuminating the path ahead, Ilara felt a quiet resolve settling within her. She had come here to save her world. But in the end, it might be something far more personal that would determine their fate. As the days turned into weeks, Ilara found herself immersed in the rhythm of VRYTH. The Calrith's cities were both a marvel of technology and a testament to their deep connection with the natural world. Every structure, every public square, every piece of machinery seemed to breathe with life. They harnessed energy from the planet's very ecosystem, using bioelectricity generated by the flora and fauna instead of the destructive fossil fuels humanity had long relied upon. Ilara marveled at the intricacy of their engineering. The Calrith had achieved what humanity could only dream of, a civilization that did not take from the planet, but rather existed in harmony with it. Every interaction she witnessed, from farming techniques to energy consumption, was part of an unbroken cycle that regenerated rather than depleted the environment. But beneath this beauty, Ilara felt a growing tension. Not all the Kalrith welcomed humanity's presence on their world. The philosophical differences between their two species were stark, and in every interaction, Ilara felt the pressure of representing a species seen as volatile and reckless. Despite this, her bond with her Kalrith guide, Rysaf, deepened, though communication between them remained somewhat formal, largely nonverbal, and based on gestures and expressions. They began to share more of their worlds with one another. Rysaf showed her the hidden places of VRYTH, the sacred groves where the Kalrith meditated. Their temples that were less buildings and more natural formations sculpted by wind, water, and time. In return, Ilara told him of Earth's history, its rise and fall, and the flicker of hope that still remained in its people. In these moments, something shifted between them. Rysaf, though still composed and reserved, began to show small signs of curiosity about humanity's emotional nature. He observed Ilara with the same detached interest, but there was something more now, a spark of understanding, of shared vulnerability. He was not just learning about humans. He was learning about her. For Ilara, it was impossible to ignore the connection forming between them. It wasn't just fascination anymore. There was something more intimate, an understanding that transcended words, a recognition of something that both frightened and intrigued her. She had always been skeptical of the stories of emotional bonds between species so vastly different. But here, in the quiet moments with Rysaf, she could feel the truth of it. As the months passed, the political landscape, both on Earth and VRYTH, began to shift. Back on Earth, tensions grew as governments debated whether to fully accept Kalrith technology. The Kalrith had offered the ability to restore Earth's ecosystems, to cleanse its poisoned waters, and even rejuvenate its atmosphere. But in return, they wanted something more than trade or political alliances. They sought a deeper relationship with humanity, one that required Earth to fundamentally change the way it thought about its own planet and the life upon it. Many Earth leaders resisted. They saw the Kalrith not as saviors, but as potential oppressors. What if their technology came with strings attached? What if the Kalrith demanded control over Earth's resources or imposed their will upon humanity's future? There were factions that whispered a conspiracy of alien subjugation and of a future where Earth would become a mere outpost of the Kalrith Empire. Ilara knew these fears well, for she had been sent as part of an exploratory mission that was itself tinged with skepticism. While she and her scientific colleagues were tasked with learning from the Kalrith, they were also there to assess the potential risks. The truth was that the Kalrith were an unknown. They were not the saviors that some on Earth wanted to believe, nor were they the conquerors that others feared. They were something in between, a species that had learned from their own mistakes and now offered both hope and caution. On VRYTH, resistance to the human presence grew more vocal. Ilara became aware of a faction within the Kalrith called the Cenithir, who believed that contact with humanity would lead to the corruption of their world. They saw humanity's emotions as a liability, their history of conflict and destruction as a warning sign. The Cenithir wanted to sever ties with Earth before it was too late, fearing that the chaotic nature of humans would infect their peaceful society. This tension reached its peak when an incident occurred at a Kalrith research facility. A group of human scientists, eager to understand the planet's energy system, conducted an unauthorized experiment, disrupting a delicate balance within VRYTH's biosphere. The result was a localized environmental collapse. A small section of the planet's ecosystem destabilized, causing the death of several species of flora and fauna that were integral to the Kalrith's energy grid. The reaction from the Cenithir was immediate and harsh. They called for the immediate expulsion of all humans from VRYTH, accusing them of recklessness and arrogance. Ilara, horrified by the consequences of the accident, could feel the ground slipping beneath her. Her mission, which had once seemed so full of promise, was now on the verge of collapse. In the aftermath of the incident, Ilara spent long hours alone, grappling with her guilt. She had come to VRYTH to learn, to help save her world. But now, it seemed as though she had brought destruction instead. The Kalrith's distrust of humanity had been validated, and she feared that the fragile alliance would shatter. But it was Raisath who surprised her. Despite the growing anger among his people, he remained by her side. In quiet moments, he would lead her to the sacred places of VRYTH, to the groves and temples where the Cowrith sought solace. He did not blame her for the actions of her colleagues. Instead, he seemed to understand that this incident was a reflection of humanity's struggle to change, to move beyond their destructive past and toward a future of balance. In these moments, Elara realized that Raisath saw in her the same thing she had begun to see in him, a reflection of their species' potential to grow and evolve. He did not judge her by the mistakes of her people, just as she did not judge him by the caution of the Cowrith. Together, they represented a possibility that neither species had fully realized. As the political storm brewed, Elara found herself standing at the center of a conflict that went beyond mere diplomacy. It was a battle for the soul of two worlds, a test of whether they could move beyond their fears and mistrust and find a way to coexist. And in the quiet moments with Raisath, she began to understand that this was not just about Earth or VRYTH. It was about the connection between individuals, about the power of understanding and empathy to bridge the vast distances between stars. The Cowrith, for all their wisdom and enlightenment, had struggled with the same challenges that now face humanity. They had nearly destroyed their world, just as humanity had done to Earth. But they had found a way to heal, to rebuild, and to live in harmony with their planet. That was a lesson they offered humanity, not just their technology, but their experience. It was a path that humans could follow if they were willing to change. In the final days of her mission, as the political tensions reached a breaking point, Elara was called upon to speak before the Cowrith Council. It was a moment of profound significance, not just for her, but for both species. The future of the Alliance hung in the balance, and her words would either unite their worlds or drive them apart. Elara stood before the council, her heart pounding in her chest. She spoke not as a scientist or an envoy, but as a human being, a member of a flawed and fragile species that had made countless mistakes. She did not ask for forgiveness, nor did she promise that humanity would change overnight. Instead, she spoke of the possibility of growth, of the power of understanding and connection to heal the wounds of the past. She told them of her time on VRYTH, of the bond she had formed with Raisath, and of the hope that she had found in their shared experiences. She acknowledged the fears of the Cenithir and the mistakes of her colleagues, but she also spoke of the potential for something greater, for a partnership that could benefit both worlds, not just through technology, but through the exchange of ideas and understanding. When she finished, the council was silent. The weight of her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Elara feared that it had all been for nothing. But then, one by one, the members of the council began to speak. Some were still wary, their voices tinged with caution, but others spoke of hope, of the possibility that Elara had described. And then Raisath, standing at her side, added his voice to hers. His words, though brief, carried the weight of a species that had once faced extinction and had emerged stronger for it. He spoke of the bond that had formed between him and Elara, not just as individuals, but as representatives of their worlds. It was a bond that could serve as a foundation for something far greater. In the end, the decision was made. The alliance would continue, but it would not be based solely on technology or trade. It would be built on the understanding that both species had much to learn from one another, that the connection between them was not just political or scientific, but personal. As Elara prepared to return to Earth, she felt a sense of quiet triumph. The path ahead would not be easy, and there were still many challenges to overcome. But she knew that something profound had begun on VRYTH, something that transcended politics and technology. It was a new chapter for both humanity and the Cowrith, one where understanding could flourish between their worlds. Raisath stood with her at the edge of the landing platform, the silvery sky of VRYTH reflecting in his deep, shimmering eyes. In the time they had spent together, they had grown not just as allies, but as something closer, something undefinable that bridged the vast gap between their species. Though their differences were still vast, there was a mutual respect, a quiet connection that neither of them could fully explain but both accepted. Ilara knew she might never return to VRYTH. Her mission was complete, and her responsibilities now lay on Earth, where she would be at the forefront of working to implement the knowledge she had gained. But the thought of leaving Rysaf and this world that had opened her eyes to new possibilities weighed heavily on her heart. Rysaf, too, seemed to sense the gravity of their parting. He offered her a small, polished stone, a symbol of VRYTH, a memento of her time among his people. She took it, feeling the cool, smooth surface beneath her fingers, knowing it was more than just a token. It was a piece of their shared experience, a reminder of the bond they had formed. As the shuttle doors closed behind her, Ilara gazed out at VRYTH one last time. The planet's beauty, its serenity, and its living connection to its people would remain etched in her memory. And as the shuttle lifted off, she felt a mix of emotions, a sadness at leaving, but also hope. Hope that what had started here would ripple across the stars, bringing their worlds closer together. The journey back to Earth was quiet. Ilara spent most of the time reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought of her planet, scarred, struggling, but not beyond redemption. The Calrith had shown her that healing was possible, but it would require more than just their advanced technology. Humanity would have to change, to adopt a new way of thinking, one that respected the delicate balance of life. Upon re-entry into Earth's atmosphere, the familiar browns and grays of the damaged planet loomed below. But this time, Ilara did not see only the devastation. She saw possibility. The Calrith's methods, though carefully guarded, had been shared in part, enough to begin the process of restoration. More than that, Ilara carried with her the understanding that change had to come not just from technology, but from the hearts of people, from a willingness to adapt, to learn from past mistakes. In the months that followed her return, Ilara found herself at the forefront of an unprecedented movement. Nations came together, inspired by her reports of the Calrith, united in a common goal of saving their world. There were still factions resistant to change, still voices that spoke of human independence and pride, unwilling to accept help from an alien species. But the tides were shifting. Slowly, Earth began to embrace a new way of living. Restoration projects sprung up across the planet, using hybrid Calrith and human technologies to heal ecosystems. Rivers that had long been dead flowed once more with clean, fresh water. Forests that had been reduced to ashes began to regrow. The air, once thick with pollution, gradually became clearer. It was not a quick process, nor an easy one, but progress was being made. As Earth slowly healed, Ilara's role became that of a liaison between worlds. She remained in constant contact with Rysaf, exchanging knowledge and updates. Their bond, though separated by the vastness of space, grew stronger. Rysaf, too, played a crucial role on VRYTH, advocating for continued cooperation with humanity despite the lingering mistrust among some of his people. But beyond the politics and science, their relationship became something more personal. In their shared communications, there was an intimacy that transcended their roles as representatives of their species. They spoke not just of planetary matters, but of their lives, their thoughts, their dreams. It was a connection that had begun with curiosity and had grown into something deeper, a bond of friendship, and perhaps something more. One day, after a particularly long session of negotiation with Earth's political leaders, Ilara received a message from Rysaf. It was simple, but it stirred something profound within her. He invited her back to VRYTH, not as a diplomat or a scientist, but as someone he cared for, as someone who had become a part of his life. Ilara knew that returning to VRYTH would not be easy. There were still those on both sides who saw their relationship, both personal and political, as a threat. But she also knew that the future of both their worlds depended on continued understanding, continued connection. And as much as her duties lay on Earth, her heart told her that her place was no longer tied to just one world. And so, with Earth slowly healing and the alliance between their species growing stronger, Ilara made her decision. She would return to VRYTH, not just for the sake of the planet or her mission, but for herself, for the connection she had found, for the bond that had defied the boundaries of species and space. As her shuttle lifted off once more, heading back toward the stars, Ilara looked forward to what awaited her on VRYTH. The journey ahead was uncertain, but it was full of possibility. And as she thought of Rysath, of the world that had become her second home, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. In the end, it was not just the technology or the politics that would determine the fate of their worlds. It was the connections between individuals, the bonds of understanding, empathy, and love that would guide them. And in that, Ilara found peace. As the stars stretched out before her, she smiled, ready for whatever came next.